Reasons for loneliness during healing. One, you are the first one to break the silence. Number two, family members may not understand your process. Number three, the need to set boundaries creates distance. Four, you may grieve the family you wish you had. Five, you simply outgrow old relationships. And six, difficulty trusting others. So these are some of the reasons, and take a look at for yourself, the reasons for loneliness during your healing process. Is it because you're the first one in your family? Do you have family members that may have more rigid mindsets and limitations as far as how they're thinking, and now you're labeled dramatic or ungrateful for just even opening up dialogue? You may feel lonely because as you start to heal, you may recognize that certain people in your life may need to go. In order for you to heal, it may be setting boundaries, and that means creating distance, and that in order to protect your emotional health and well-being, particularly around toxic relatives. And this includes toxic friends too. One of the biggest ones, and probably the one I struggle with the most, is you may grieve the family you wish you had. And I can tell you more often than not that your healing allows you to see family dynamics more clearly. And it doesn't mean you necessarily need to cut them off. However, this grieving of wanting a loving, supportive family that you wish you had, I don't know if that quite ever goes away. And so this sense of loss is profoundly painful. And believe me, it's a normal part of old expectations and then creating your own sense of safety. As I mentioned, you outgrow old relationships. And what does that mean for you? Certain family members, friends, romantic partners. The more you grow into who you are, the more awareness you create. One of the consequences of that is you're going to see people more clearly for who they are versus the way you internalize. So what does that mean? Maybe you internalize, I'm the problem. I'm the one that's wrong. I'm the one that's too dramatic, too sensitive. And then the more you heal, the more you recognize, whoa, these dynamics are projections. They're projecting onto me how they feel. Their anger is not my fault, or it's not about what I'm doing. So you have to remember, you may need to have the courage to walk away from these relationships. And that could be very lonely and a very necessary step for you to create more community with more like-minded people who are going to uplift you and support you. And then the other thing, which is I think is at the core of a lot of how we move as out of, and I was talking to someone yesterday, rightfully so, right? This difficulty to trust others. And that is a core wound of relational trauma that stemmed very much in our families of origin. So you have to remember this difficulty that you have in forming relationships, forming healthy relationships, can lead to self-protective behaviors. And what does that mean? You may avoid intimacy or push people away that are healthy and loving, that see you. You may want to run for the hills because you're not used to that. And so that takes a lot of work, because the very thing you want, a loving connection, you may inadvertently reject it, which in turn reinforces the loneliness. The path of healing and being a cycle breaker, particularly within our cultural context, is extremely difficult. And it's going to be really important that you take intentional steps to find connection and support throughout your healing journey. And what do I mean in that? intentionality means what's the energy you're moving into your healing journey. When I was growing up, I wanted to prove my father wrong. I wanted to prove the Arab community wrong, that a woman, you're talking in the 70s and 80s, not halkiyat, right? That we're more than just having children and being a home. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying that I wanted to do more in my life than what culturally was expected. And I wasn't intentional. I moved in it, trailblazing, fighting. And I think if I had somebody guiding me to say, take it easy, take it step by step. And last week I talked about the quiet revolution, that you can move in the space within our cultural context without all the fighting. And so part of that is understanding seeking professional help. And within our cultural context, I always say work with a trauma-informed therapist. Now, whether you had big traumas in your life, which most Arab do, and that's across the board, wherever you are. There's big traumas because of our collective culture, and to provide a safe space. Now, I know we use that word a lot, but a safe space is, can you feel, it's a feeling that only you can answer for yourself, that when you're talking to somebody, you feel connected. You feel like you could be seen and heard and not judged, to process these inherited wounds and to develop healthier coping mechanisms. Because let me tell you, we don't have that great of healthy coping mechanisms within our culture. Now, people will get mad at me. This is my experience as a clinician of 25 years. What I see is we are lacking coping. We cope with food, typically. We cope with alcohol, marijuana. Some of you out there, they like the cocaine. They like the adrenaline rush. We may mask it through sex and some of the addictions. Workaholics. We work so hard. We don't necessarily see that as well, that's a healthy coping. Look how hard they work. Yet some of that can be problematic. So in order to navigate these complex family dynamics, and they're complex within our culture, that's what I tell therapists that don't work within our culture, that if you're working with anybody from the Middle East, depending on where they are, and you're talking multiple layers upon layers, that we can't do this surfacey mental health. We need to understand the deeper layers of our family dynamics that go back multiple generations. It's woven within us. It's embedded. And sometimes these complex family dynamics need to be done with intentionality and with a culturally humble therapist. Seek professional help, please. Trying to do this on your own, I think is going to be very, very difficult. Because you're a cycle breaker and you're doing it alone. Which leads to the next point is connect with supportive people. Now, our cousins are usually our friends, our community. Now, just because we have a large community, it doesn't necessarily mean they're supportive. And so you want to, again, this word, intentionally build relationships with friends and your peers who understand your journey. Now, I had many friends growing up, many still till this day, that we understood one another's journeys as Palestinian, American, or we had Jordanian, we also had Greek, we had some Turkish people, right? Similar cultural context where we understood one another's journeys, and then we grew up together in that. Now, there was some Palestinian Americans in my community growing up. They did not understand one iota, one idea of how I moved in the world. And in fact, they went out of their way to try and harm and bring myself and my friends down through gossip, malicious gossip, trying to ensure to keep us small from breaking out of some of these cultural expectations and norms, even though they were doing all this stuff behind closed doors. So be really careful on who you surround yourself with. I just realized, well, if any of you are watching, we knew what you were doing, trying to shame us for what you were doing behind closed doors. Anyway, I digress. But the point is you want to connect with supportive people. And sharing your experiences with others, also breaking cycles can be incredibly validating. And that's, you want to be able to surround yourself with people that are going to uplift you and validate you. And hopefully this community provides that for you as well. Something we are going to be launching in a couple of months is join a support group. Now, I do have a support group that I'm going to be starting up. The last one was amazing. If any of you guys are watching, you guys, I still think about you. You guys were amazing. I still hold all of that in my heart. So cool when we can come together as a community and talk about all these things. There's nothing more powerful than the collective culture coming together and healing. Support groups, because what it does is it offers a sense of connection and belonging by introducing you to people with similar experiences. And I see a lot of you doing that in the comments, supporting one another, understanding one another, giving to one another. And so, give me 1 second. And so that's really important. These can be formal groups, therapy groups, or community groups focused on healing. Now, the other piece is we talk about self-care practices. Now, self-care, especially here in the US, gets thrown around a lot. It's totally overused. It's, for me as a clinician, lost its meaning, to be honest with you. Now, self-care is not necessarily, self-care practices is about combating the exhausting emotional and physical toll. So what does that mean? It could be giving yourself permission to rest. I think somebody mentioned, was it Maral earlier? You talked about panic attacks. Well, what's happening is your self-care practices may be limited. And so what does that mean? You're overriding the exhaustion or the emotion, the ruminating thoughts. You're letting them go more than what your body can handle. And then now you add chronic doom scrolling on social media, distracting from nature, disconnecting from people, and you wonder why you're exhausted and you're physically just completely drained, and to be very, very aware of that. Now, prioritizing your self-care activities within an Arab household can be quite tricky and challenging because of the demands of our family and the constant need to serve their needs first before our own, which is fine. I love taking care of the elders and doing what I can for my family or my friends. However, you have to be mindful to put yourself first, and then you have more space to do things for others. And your self-care practices could be creative outlets. It could be journaling, exercise, even meal prep or food, because we come from a culture where there's a lot of food, and you may want to have more nutrition. And you may want to do your own food prep. And that's important to you because when you're at Auntie's house and they have all the delicious things, you're going to probably sabotage what your own goals are around that. Self-care would be, I'm going to take care of my food needs first and what I need to do for myself. And that's really healthy. Self-care practices can also include your mindset. Do I want to stay in a victim mindset, or do I want to move forward in healthier things in which we tell ourselves? So the other piece that I talk a lot about on this platform is practicing self-compassion. We are so hard on ourselves for any little thing. And it's really about forgiving yourself for not always getting it right. As you're healing and as you're building and as you're learning. Now, some of you may say, well, Tiffany, I'm 28 years old and I should know this already. I hear this a lot from members of our community. And I said, well, let's not look at age, because many of us, our development was stunted very early. So when you talk about decision making, right? You may not have been able to fully make your own decisions until you were an adult, yet you learn all that as an adolescent, and that may have been stunted. And so you want to forgive yourself for making mistakes and not getting it right. Healing is not a linear process. I tell people some days you're going to go back, but it's how quickly you get back up. It's not this, here's step one, step two, on Instagram or the social media, there's step one, step two, and they think, oh, miraculously, you're going to be healed. No, that's not the reality. The reality is healing is messy. Healing within our cultural context is extremely difficult and very messy, because you don't know where you're going to get triggered. You may have suppressed so much of your emotions that when emotions come up, you're going to be confused by them. You may not understand them. And that's okay. That's okay. You're learning. And so you deserve the same kindness and grace that you would give to anyone in your life. Give that to yourself, especially when you're on this healing journey, especially when you're a cycle breaker. Because you, as I did when I was younger, you may act in ways that, oh gosh, I am not proud at all of some of the things I've done in the past, thrashing about in our culture, trying to be seen and heard and all of that. But I could look back on that and forgive that teenager or forgive that young adult, because there was nobody to guide her to an alternative. She just did what she needed to do to survive. And that may be some of you. Another piece to what you may need to do to combat this loneliness is you're a cycle breaker, and is engage in creative or spiritual practices. Now, no matter your religion, it's the God of your heart, even if you're atheist. What are the things, you want to do for you? And one thing I love about our culture is our storytelling, our rituals, and other practices that facilitate collective healing. When we come together in chanting or prayer or song, or in creating art, or even tetrias, my grandmother and aunt, they would be doing the tetrias, and there was collectively, and it was so beautiful as they would share stories. How do we create these spaces? I have read books from authors from all over the Arab world. My gosh, their stories are incredible. We need to really take a look at, you take a look at for yourself, where are the creative spaces? What are the spiritual practices outside of religion? Because we have a lot of religious trauma within our culture. But can we go back to our indigenous roots, to go back to to go back to what our ancestor did for medicinal healing? I'm a firm believer in that. Incorporating these traditions into our personal practices can provide a sense of meaning and connection. Yet you may want to create that for you in whatever way that means. It could be dancing. It could be listening to music, playing an instrument. I know I have a cousin, he's a well-known oud maker, and watching as he makes the oud, and the music that he plays is all about that healing space. My cousin Pam, Toda Studios, she creates her pottery using Tetria's patterns, which has been all a part of her healing journey, and it's been incredible to watch. I have cousins that are authors that wrote books sharing their story, and for the first time, our family's legacies is written on paper. That's incredibly healing. You may have a story within you, a piece of art, a piece of music, a dance. And so it's not just about the mental health practices. It's about how can we come together? How can we go back to, what is the right word, Mira? Asalna? Is that right? To go
Yes.
back to Asalna, whether you're from Yemen or Egypt or Palestine or Urdun or Syria or Iraq, we've lost sight of this in the modern world. And it's how do we blend these things together? The next topic of the cultural layers of loneliness, that because we come from a very family-centered identity, Arab culture often defines identity through family and community. So if you feel disconnected from them, think about that. By choice or circumstance, it could feel like you're losing a core part of yourself. And I do not say that lightly. Coming from a Palestinian background, it is, there's the olive tree and we are the roots. And no matter what happens back home, we could feel it, and we could feel it deeply because of this connection. And there are circumstances that kept us from being in our home countries, many times not by choice. And that loneliness isn't just about being alone, but feeling completely cut off from belonging. And that can feel powerless when you're seeing what's happening in your home countries, and there's a lot that you can't, you feel powerless to what you can do to help because it's in our DNA. So remember that even if you leave your family by choice, because of our intense sense of belonging, which is our strength, you could feel like you're losing a limb. And I don't say that lightly. Silence and shame. We talk a lot about that on our platform around struggles like mental health, conflict, boundaries are often kept private. So families are suffering alone. They may have a family member that struggles with severe mental health issues, and it's kept private. And this creates a loneliness amongst the family, or they feel like they can't get the support that they need. And what's important is that people may feel like because I can't share openly, they can't get the support that they may need because of this fear of judgment. And so that's going to be really, really tough. So we need to break the silence. We need to let go of the shame and acknowledge between ourselves that yes, we're struggling and it's okay. That's part of our human experience. And where do we go to get that help? And can we have permission to get that help? So when you're a cycle breaker, please know that that this silence and shame in you bringing things up is going to cause a lot of difficulties in the family. Like Lena mentioned with her book, families are really going to push up against that because of that. We talk about migration and the diaspora. So many Arab living outside the Middle East and North Africa experience double the loneliness. Separated from family back home, and many of us love our families, we're connected to our families, and now we're not fully belonging in the new culture. I don't know how many, Netherlands I think comes up. There's a large Middle Eastern community for Netherlands, and I can't find any therapists that have cultural humility to be able to help support this community. And so their sense of belonging in trying to assimilate into a new culture can be very, very difficult. So one of the things to remember is the longing for home becomes tied to people, food, language, and community gatherings. And so when you're living in the diaspora, where do you find that? And sometimes you're in environments where it's very, very limited. And how can you create that home for you? What are some things you can do? The other big cultural thing, and this is what I'm seeing now, is the generational gaps. So for all the younger Arab out there watching, I'm letting you know that you may value individuality, therapy, or breaking cycles, while the elders may prioritize tradition, honor, and collective identity. And so that gap may cause hidden loneliness, even though you're surrounded by family, that the younger generations wanting to have this blend of the beauty of our culture, but also some individuality and autonomy, and your family is keeping stuck. They want to stay in these old systems that are not working in our world anymore. I think it's getting better. But for the younger generation, that loneliness you feel, my hope is this community will really support you in knowing, keep on your path. Do not be afraid to move forward, because you are helping to evolve our culture, not keep us in this revolving door of generational trauma. So one of the things in coping with the loneliness within our cultural context is also, can we reframe belonging? Belonging doesn't necessarily mean go with the status quo. Just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's you can honor culture while creating new forms of connection. And that's what we're trying to do here in Community for International Arab, is can we recreate what this belonging means to us? And it doesn't necessarily mean fitting old molds. We're creating a new mold, all of us together. We're creating this space where people can find meaning, who share our same values and our same cultural roots. We're just redefining it. And there's nothing wrong with that. One of the beautiful things about our culture is cultural anchors. And I use this a lot because I moved to Los Angeles. I'm still pretty close to my family, but I moved away. So I miss my mom's cooking. I miss her food. And so connecting that loneliness with food is a big one. Thankfully, I'm in Los Angeles. There's a lot of great Middle Eastern restaurants, so I can get that home cooking. Music, my daughter and I will listen to Arabic music. We'll stay connected to that. Reading poetry. I love Khalil Gibran, and anytime my father used to read Khalil Gibran, so in reading that, it brings me closer to home. Also, even though I speak broken Arabic, speaking Arabic or listening to Arabic, even listening to the prayers, no matter the religion, can give a sense of comfort and continuity in bringing us home. And even if the relationships are strained, there's ways that we can connect to our cultural anchors, because that's the essence of who we are. And again, how do we not lose sight of that? Because there is so much beauty in our culture that we can stay connected. Sometimes even cooking an Arabic dish, or the other day, Binti was listening to, she's 17, and she was listening to Fairuz in the morning as she was getting ready to go to school. And I thought, oh my gosh, it brought me back to when my mother was listening to Fairuz growing up as a kid. And it was that sense of belonging even in the new generation. These are the cultural anchors that are going to keep us together healing. As I mentioned earlier, storytelling, sharing your story. Oh my gosh, I've heard so many incredible stories in small trusted places. Even if they're not Arab and you want to share your story, people need to hear. We need to break the silence around everything that we're going through. My gosh, as a culture, how much war, how much pain, how much suffering. And yet we have to keep sakteen and we have to stay quiet. We can't even have our mental health. We can't even have our emotional struggles. La. Break the silence. People, this stoic that we have in our culture is a beautiful thing. Yet I also wonder, is it that the world dehumanizes us as Arab because we're so stoic and we're so resilient and we're so strong that they have no idea how broken how broken the culture can be because of that. And so how many Arab in the community, they feel isolated because we're all going through these struggles silently. And so I don't want us to be silent anymore. People need to see our pain. They need to see what we go through, but we can't have others see it unless we can see it for ourselves first. And the last one is faith and spirituality, which is the fabric of where all of that was born, was where we come from. And for many Arab, the prayer is one piece of it, but it's not all of it. It doesn't solve everything. It can help. It can connect us. It could soften our loneliness by fostering connection to God or to your ancestors or to your higher self, whatever you believe. It doesn't matter to me. But how do you bring back to connecting with you? And the more you can connect with you, the God of your heart, the less lonely you will feel. But again, we're so disconnected because we're focusing on all these things, material things that don't matter. Okay? All right. We're almost done here. So as I summarize this, and I'll get back to all of your questions, is loneliness in the Arab community often isn't a personal failing. Please remember that. You feeling what you're feeling is not a personal failing. It is a symptom of living between worlds, tradition and change, homeland and diaspora, family and individuality, and naming it out loud. What we're doing in here is an act of healing. And how can we come together to blend the two so that we're not feeling so alone? And how do we look at the systems that are creating the loneliness versus internalizing it as some weakness within you? It's not. It's not a weakness. Look at what's happening. But we have to take responsibility for ourselves. No one is going to save us. We have to save ourselves. Mabad, collectively. Not with our division, not with our hating, not with these arbitrary arguments over politics and this and that, and nobody has a clue. And so this is where we break these generational cycles by first acknowledging, what can I do within me? How am I moving in the world? And can I help someone feel at home versus create more loneliness with judgment and hatred and lack of kindness? We stay rooted in our culture without repeating pain. Food is our connection. Language is our power. We have a beautiful language, and can we use it for good? Our art, our music. We must reclaim our poetry, our dance, our music. There is no shame in any of that. It is expressions of resilience. And we can't be khaifin on shu nas biyihku because you want to write a book or because you want to create art and because you don't want to go to do some career that they want you to do. It's okay to use our language to say ana ta'bana or ana ta'ban, that I'm tired, because even in that vulnerability, I'm letting you guys know, give yourself permission to say ihna ta'banin. We are tired of the suffering. We are tired of it. And again, how can we reclaim our power to say, how do we move that fatigue into abundance? How do we reclaim that for ourselves? And you do that brick by brick, just like we built this community, brick by brick. And it's going to take time, and you're going to make mistakes, And you're going to get a lot of pushback, because anytime there's going to be great change, there's going to be a lot of pushback. And that's okay. You keep moving forward. And we're going to remind you to keep moving forward. And this means doing it daily. Finding that connection daily. Doing the rituals that you need to do daily. And we are going to create a space to create more community and more support. We are committed to that. And be self-aware. Be self-aware. Start with you. Your emotions, how you relate, your behaviors, and sometimes that's some reacting to some really ugly truths. Ask yourself, why do I react this way? What is going on within me? And have the emotional courage to face it and do something different. This community is to hold the hope and vision for a healthier, freer future. One where love feels safe, communication is open, and emotions are honored. There's nothing to feel guilty about. We, the cycle breakers, don't just heal for ourselves. We heal for future generations and model new ways of being for others. And that's generosity. And that's the greatest generosity. Our culture comes from this generosity. Can we not just do it through giving of ourselves, but also to shape future generations so they can feel safe? Remember, our tagline here is Nawar tit nawar. That the light in me sees the light in you. In turn, when you see the light within yourself, you'll be able to see the light in other people. And together we will illuminate and evolve the terrible things that are happening, that we can bring more light, more love. That's the essence of everything we do here, of understanding, compassion. And we cannot do that until we can move through all the layers of shame and guilt and messaging to be able to see the light within ourselves. And in turn, that's how we heal. So I thank every single person that participated, your comments, your support. We are here to be of service. And with that said, I hope to see you guys on our next live next Wednesday, Wadih Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific. We're going to have another topic that we're going to share with you around our cultural context. So I wish you all a very good evening wherever you are, good day, and remember, shine your light. Don't be afraid to honor your truth, walk your path, even if it's silently within yourself, and together we will heal.